Morning, dear students. Today, let us discuss phonology. Okay, in the previous discussions, we have discussed phonetics. Phonetics is related to the study of sounds such as vowels and consonants, and the articulation and the production and articulation of those sounds. Here, phonology is essentially the description of the systems and patterns of speech sounds in a language. The description of systems and patterns of speech sounds in a language. So phonology is concerned with the abstract or mental aspect of the sounds in language rather than with the actual physical articulation of speech sounds. Okay, in phonetics we studied physical articulation of sound, but here this phonology is more concerned to the more concerned with the abstract or mental aspects of the sound. Abstract or mental aspects of the sound. So what we can find in this phonology, the description of systems and patterns of speech sounds. How different sounds may be grouped as syllables, and how the syllables may be grouped as words, and what are the rules underlying in those combinations. Right? This is what we may study in this phonology. Right? So, of course, it is concerned with the mental or abstract aspects of the sounds, mental capability or mental scheme. Okay, rather than the physical articulation of speech sounds, rather than with the actual physical articulation of speech sounds. Phonology is about the underlying design. Try to understand this point. Phonology is about the underlying design, the blueprint of each sound type, which may vary in different physical contexts. Okay, for example, if you take the letter C, in some words it is cha, in some words it is ka, C-A and kan, C-H-A-I-R, chair, cha and ka. Based on different physical context, these words, okay, may vary. The pronunciation of those words or those sounds may vary, right? See here, let me give you some examples. Let us think the sound T. First of all, first word is ta, T-A-R, ta. Second one, star. Third one, writer. And the next one, butter. And another one, 8. In all these words, the same letter is there. In all these words, the same letter is there. That is T sound, T letter. But that T letter was not pronounced equally with equal stress or with equal prominence on that particular letter in all these words. We do not pronounce because of the variation. Because of the variation, phonological variation, we can find in those words. That is phonology. Okay, see, ta, star, there's no pressure. There's no such the emphasis on this letter T in star. We have more emphasis on T in the sound or in the word ta. Okay. In case of butter, butter, though there are two T's, consequent two T's, still it may be uttered as lightweight, butter. Okay, and E8GHT, eight, eight, ta sound. Okay, there that T, okay, has no such emphasis as in case of ta or as in case of writer, right? That's why they would represent the same letter, but the pronunciation may be different. Okay, with the different modulation, we may utter those sounds. Phonology is concerned with the abstract representation of sounds. Phonology is concerned with the abstract representation of sounds in our minds that enables us to recognize and interpret the meaning of the words on the basis of actual physical sounds we see and hear. Okay, actually, this is the abstract representation of sound. Phonology is concerned with the abstract representation of sound in our mind. In our mind, we may have an idea of the word. We may have a shape of the word in our mind. That is the abstract representation in our mind for that particular sound. For that particular sound. Okay, but it may take the physical shape. It may take the physical shape and it may become the physical sound when we utter that word. For example, in my mind, I have the word cat. Okay, unless I utter the cat, it can't take physical shape. It can't become the physical sound. Okay, before I utter that sound, cat, it may survive or it may be represented in my mind. Okay, before uttering the words and sounds, surely we will have an image or an idea. Okay, an abstract representation of those words in our minds. Okay, then once it is uttered, we can recognize. Okay, when we hear, we can recognize them. When we utter, others can recognize those meaning, recognize and interpret the meaning of that sound, the meaning of that physical sound. Okay, for example, Rama, 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 the same two letters, but when we utter them, surely there may be difference in our utterance. Surely there may be difference in our utterance. Okay, phonology is concerned with the abstract representation of sounds in our minds that enables us to recognize and interpret the meaning of the words on the basis of the actual physical sounds we say and hear. The meaning may be understood sure, but when we utter those sounds physically. Okay, so that is phonology. Now let us discuss what are other concepts in this phonology. Okay, you see, each one of these meaning distinguishing sounds in a language is described as a funny. Meaning distinguishing sounds the sounds which convey a meaning, the sounds which distinguish the meaning from other sounds. Each one of these meaning distinguishing sounds in our language is described as phoneme. Is described as phoneme. Okay, but you have to remember this phoneme is abstract representation. This phoneme is abstract representation. Okay, for example, it is in this sense that the phoneme T is described as a sound type. Because of this phoneme, because of the sense of the phoneme, we can describe T as a phoneme, as a sound type, of which all the different spoken versions of T are tokens. Different spoken versions of T are tokens for this phoneme, right? So an abstract segment. This phoneme is an abstract segment, as opposed to the square brackets as in T, used for each phonetic or physically produced segment. Okay, in case of phonetics, that letter may be written in brackets. That letter may be written in square brackets. Square brackets. T brackets. Okay, square bracket. Right? But whereas in case of this phoneme, that may be written between slashes, phoneme. Okay, an essential property of a phoneme is that it functions contrastively. It functions contrastively. Okay, the phoneme functions contrastively. This is T because it is not K, it is not W, it is not S, it is not O. Contrastively, the phoneme functions. This contrastive property is a basic operational test. This contrastive property is a basic operational test for determining the phonemes in a language. Phonemes in a language. If we change one sound in a word and there is a change of meaning, the sounds are distinct phonemes. The sounds are distinct. For example, take the phoneme cat. Take the phoneme word. Take the word cat. C-A-T. Okay. So C-A-T, phonemes. If we change one phoneme, then if we change one phoneme, such as instead of C, if we write R, it is rat. C-A-T. Instead of C, if you change R, then it is rat. R-A-T, rat. What do you understand from this point? If you change one phoneme in the word, if you change one phoneme, one sound in the word, if you change one sound in the word, surely the meaning may change. Okay, cat is a phoneme, rat is another phoneme. Okay, it works, it functions contrastively. The phoneme functions contrastively because C-A-T is cat, because it is not rat, it is not mat, it is not bat. Got this point? So, of course, phonemes. Yeah, these are the phonemes. Abstract sound patterns of phonemes. Abstract sound patterns. Abstract and meaning distinguishing sounds in a language are called phonemes. Then let us see what are phones. Phones. You have to understand this point carefully. You see, phones. While the phoneme is the abstract unit or sound type in the mind, there are many different versions of that sound type regularly produced in actual speech. We can describe those different versions as phones. We can describe those versions as phones. Okay, which are phonetic units in square brackets. These phones are phonetic units in square brackets. Okay, actual phoneme exists in our mind. Actual phoneme exists in our mind because it is abstract system, abstract unit or sound type. But what is actually visible or comprehensive sound? That is phone. That is phone. R-A-M-A. I may pronounce it as Rama or I may pronounce it as Rama. Okay. So, though there is a particular sound pattern in our mind in the abstract form, which is called phoneme. Now, when we utter that sound, in that regular production in actual speech, okay, in that regular production in our actual speech, there may be different versions of that sound. There may be different versions of that sound. Rama, Rama, Rama. Okay, based on a purpose, the same word may be pronounced with a different margin, with a different version of the sound. Okay, Bannara, 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 Bannara. The same word, but expressed with a different modulation, That is called form. That is called form. Okay, so for one phoneme, there may be different forms. For one phoneme, there may be different forms. When we have a set of forms, all of which are versions of one phoneme, we add the prefix along and call them allophones of that phoneme. For example, okay, the same sound, the same phonemic sound have different sounds, different versions of one phoneme. Okay, different versions of the forms of one phoneme. Then we can call it allophone. Okay, for example, tar, writer, butter, and eight. These are the same phonemic. In this, there is one same phonemic sound, that is T. Okay, then this phoneme T can be pronounced in a number of physical different ways as phones. in a number of different physical ways as forms. The T sound in the word tar is normally pronounced with a stronger puff of air than is present in the T sound in the word star. Okay, we should feel some physical evidence of aspiration, that is puff up. Physical evidence of aspiration, that utterance with some air. This aspirated form is represented more precisely as T at the top H. Okay, so TH, H at the top, like A square. See here, these phonemes in the physical form become forms. In the physical form become forms. Okay, when we have a set of forms, all of which are versions of the one form. If there is one form and all the version, all the phonemes, sorry, all the forms are of which are of this one phoneme, are of this one phoneme. Okay, that set we call, that set of phonemes we call allophones. That set of phones we call allophones. A-L-L-O. L-O-P-H-O-N-E-S. P-H-O-N-E-S. Allophones. Right? In the pronunciation of word like eighth, the influence of the final dental tha sound causes a dental articulation of the T sound. Okay? Here, the end sound, that is dental, tha, tha, that will influence the utterance of the preceding sound T. The utterance of the preceding sound T. Here, you have to understand, because of the end, because of the final dental sound, there is dental articulation of the sound T. Eighth, eighth. There is some, there is a no visible, or there is no comprehensive utterance of the word T. Comprehensive utterance of the word T, or the full utterance of the word T. There is no such chance. Okay. Because these variations are all part of one set of forms, because these variations are all part of one set of forms, they are referred to as allophones of the phoneme T. They are referred to as allophones of the phoneme T. So, for one phoneme, there may be one phone or more variations of the phones, more variations of the sound, what we call phones. Okay, if we could find a set of phones of one phoneme, then we call all those phones as allophones for this phoneme. Allophones for this phoneme. Okay. So one phoneme, many phones. One phoneme and many phones may be there. Okay. The crucial distinction between phonemes and allophones is that substituting one phoneme for another will result in a word with a different meaning. But substituting allophones only result in a different pronunciation of the same word. Try to understand this point carefully. If you, okay, if we substitute one phoneme for another one, the total meaning of the word may change. The total meaning of the word may change. Okay. Here, when we find such change of the phoneme, for example, C-A-T, cat is a phoneme. Instead of C, if we write R, then it is a rat. The total meaning is changed. The total meaning is changed. Here, but in case of allophones, or in case of phones, or allophones, okay, if you substitute another allophone, then in it result in different pronunciation of the same word. Different pronunciation of the same words. What can you understand here? Okay, instead of calling it as a can, 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 you may call it can. You may pronounce it can. Okay, that is also a change of the pronunciation, but the meaning won't be changed. The meaning won't be changed. What do you find here? Allophones are related to the pronunciation, but phoneme is related to the meaning generation, meaning distinguish, meaning distinguish. Sorry, meaning distinction, meaning distinction. So, for example, ta, that third, instead of uttering third, at least you can utter ta. Even we can reduce the emphasis, ta. Then the pronunciation change, the meaning won't change. Okay, then minimal pairs and sets. Minimal pairs and sets. Phonemic distinctions in a language. Phonemic distinctions in a language can be tested via pairs and sets of words. Via pairs and sets of words. When two words such as fan and van are identical in form except for a contrast in one phoneme occurring in the same position, the two words are described as minimal pairs. The two words are described as minimal pairs. Try to understand this point carefully. Fan and van, they are identical because there are three sounds and the pronunciation is almost the same except one sound, the first sound, fan, van. Because of that, because of the first sound, okay, these two are different. These two are different. Okay, because of that sound, we can distinguish the meaning. We can distinguish the meaning, right? So, such a word such as fan and van are identical in the form except for a contrast in one phoneme. Only the contrast is only in one phoneme, that is F and V, occurring in the same position. Then the two words are described as minimal pairs. Fan, van. Fan, van. Okay, bath and mat. Bath and mat. Okay, sit and sing. Sit and sing. myth and myth, myth and myth. Okay, these are minimal pairs. These are minimal pairs. Try to understand the minimal pairs. We will have two words. Those two words are almost identical except one phone. The pronunciation may be same. Okay, the utterance almost seems alike except one phone. Fan, van. Okay, so bath, math, rat, cat, rat, cat. These are minimal pairs. But what do you think? Fan, van, ran, man. Okay, pan, pan. See how many words are there? How many phonemic words, phonemes are there? Okay, in all these words, one phoneme is different. In all these words, one phoneme is different. If we have such words, more than two, which may have some identical relation, and the contrast in one or two, maximum one phoneme, then we call it minimal set. Minimal set. Okay, when a group of words can be differentiated, each one from the other, by changing one phoneme, they are described as a minimal set. They are described as a minimal set. Okay, for example, CAT, cat. Instead of C, if you substitute the possible phonemes, okay, such as D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, like that, you may find number of words which may seems alike except one sound. Such group of words we call minimal set. Such group of words we call minimal set. Okay. So we saw minimal pairs. Pair means two. Minimal pairs and minimal sets. Okay. These are minimal pairs and minimal sets. Okay. In this, okay, with this knowledge of minimal set and minimal pair, we can have another fact which we call phonotactics. Phonotactics. This type of exercise with minimal sets also allows us to see that there are definite patterns in types of sound combinations permitted in a language. Only such words are permitted with a definite patterns of combination. Different definite patterns and the types of sound combinations. Okay, C-A-T cat, B-A-T bat, D-A-T bat, C-A-T cat, D-A-T dat. Is there such word D-A-T? No. E-A-T, it. E-A-T, it. Okay. F-A-T, fat, H-A-T, hat. Okay, E, A-T, eat. F-A-T, fat. G-A-T. Is there possible word? G-A-T. Is there any such word in your dictionary? G-A-T. But with this pattern, G-A-T, writing G-A-T, writing the spelling G-A-T in a word or a word like, there is possibility to create such words. But actually, in our language, there would be no such words. There would be no such words. According to dictionary, these words are not English words, but they could be viewed as possible English words. They are possible English words. Even we are not sure when they may be considered as words of the English language. Okay, when this possibility become reality, when this possible combination may happen in real language, in real language. Okay, such words we call phonotactics. Such words we call phonotactics. Okay, sorry, not such words, such constraints. Such constraints. Okay, why shouldn't we consider GAT as a word? Okay, they could be viewed as possible English words. That is our phonological knowledge of the patterns of sound in English words. Okay, why should we consider GAT? Why shouldn't we consider A, E, F, A, E, O, I as a word? A, E, O, I as a word? We can't consider it. Okay, because of this phonological knowledge, we can consider, or at least we can think or view as possible English word, right? So they might, for example, begin an invented abbreviation. Okay, in the future, GAT may be an invented abbreviation. Okay, until then, they represent accidental gaps in the vocabulary of English. Okay, it is, however, no accidental that forms such as FSIG or RNIZ do not exist or are sequence unlikely ever to exist. Okay, beyond this phonological knowledge, if we find FSIG, we can't accept it. Even we can't view that word as a future possible word. They have been formed without obeying some constraints on the sequence or position of English phonemes. Right? They do not follow the constraints. They do not obey for such words F, S, I, G or R, I, R, N, I, Z, or N, I, Z. They have been formed without obeying some constraints on the sequence or position of English phonemes. There should be proper rules. Okay, there are proper rules to form words. Such constraints are called the phonotactics. Such constraints are called phonotactics. What are phonotactics? Permitted arrangements of sounds. Permitted arrangement of sounds. The rules underlying for arrangement of sounds. That is phonotactics. That is phonotactics. Because these constraints operate on a unit, because these constraints operate on a unit that is larger than the single segment or phoneme, that are larger than the single segment or phoneme, we have to move on to a consideration of the basic structure of that larger phonological unit called the syllable. The syllable. But these phonotactics can't be studied with a single phoneme or with a single segment or phoneme. With single segment of sound or phoneme, it is not possible to understand these phonotactics. For that, we have to consider the basic structure of the larger phonological unit. The basic structure of the larger phonological unit than the single segment. And that particular basic structure of the larger phonological units are called syllable. Are called syllable, right? So, a consideration of basic structures of that larger phonological unit called the syllable. Okay. Now, to understand these phonotactics, to understand how these individual phonemes may be grouped as a word. What are the rules underlying in that formation? Underlying in that formation. Okay, we have to understand all of them. We have to move to consider syllable, a larger unit, a larger phonological unit than a single segment of sound. A larger phonological unit than the single segment of sound. That is called syllable. Okay, so dear students, we shall discuss those syllables in the next class. First, you have to understand them carefully again. We discussed what is phonology as a branch of this linguistics. We discussed that this is the description of systems and patterns of speech sounds. And we discussed that phonology is concerned with the abstract representation of sounds in our mind. And then we discussed phonemes. We distinguished phonemes and phones. And we distinguished the allophones. And then we moved to discuss, minimal pairs and minimal sets. Minimal pairs and minimal sets. Right? These are the topic we discussed in this today's class. Okay, so in the next class we shall discuss syllables and articulating effect, articulation effects. Syllables and articulation effects. These are the fundamental concepts in phonology, right? Thank you, Ananda. And in the next class, we shall discuss some more topics. Thank you, Ananda.